Before we proceed further, request you to please subscribe to our channel as shown above. Hello friends, welcome to Kamath Astrology. In today's video, we are going to talk about Mars entering into the sign of Aquarius from 7th April 2022 to 16th May 2022. And this is a very good transit because it is going to force all of us to act and transform. So in this video, let us analyze the impact of this transit on the world in general as well as on all of us. Now look at this chart. You can see that Mars moves from the sign of Capricorn or Makar, where Saturn is present right now, represented by the letters SA, into the sign of Aquarius or Kumbh, represented by the letters MA, where Jupiter and Venus is present right now. Now first let us understand what the sign of Aquarius is all about. The sign of Aquarius is the sign of friendship. It is the sign of social networks. It is the sign of research. It is also the sign which represents shortcuts. The sign of Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. It is also the Mool Trikon sign for Saturn, which means Saturn is extremely positive and powerful in the sign of Aquarius. Now what is happening is Mars is moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. The sign of Capricorn was also ruled by Saturn. The sign of Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn. But this is the sign of humanity. This is the sign of friendship. Whereas Capricorn was the sign of order, structure, discipline, power, hierarchy. So now Mars is free from that negativity and he comes into a positive sign. Now what is Mars? Mars is red in color. He represents the blood flowing in our body. He represents the passion within us. He represents the determination within us. He represents the courage within us. Mars represents our ability to take action. And therefore, when Mars enters into the sign of Aquarius, which is the natural 11th house in the zodiac belt, which represents hopes, wishes, aspirations, desires, friend circle, social network, it will trigger us to take action, to fulfill our wishes, to fulfill our aspirations, to fulfill our desires. But because this sign is associated with friendship, this sign is associated with large organizations, social gatherings, the action we will take will be more oriented towards helping humanity by forming groups, by being part of social networks, social circles, and in some way giving a contribution to uplifting humanity. Now when Mars first enters the sign of Aquarius, he enters into the last two padas of the Dhanishta Nakshatra. He remains in the Dhanishta Nakshatra till around April 16th, 2022. And Dhanishta Nakshatra is Mars' own nakshatra. It is ruled by Mars. So when Mars is in Dhanishta, Dhanishta is represented by a drum. It is represented by the sound coming from the Damru of Lord Shiva, and it represents rhythm. So this transit of Mars into Dhanishta Nakshatra is very good for engaging in physical activities, in sports, or doing any kind of good work. And that is what Mars encourages us to do when he enters the Dhanishta Nakshatra and remains there till April 16th, 2022. After this, Mars moves into the Shatabhisha Nakshatra. The Shatabhisha Nakshatra is ruled by Rahu, and Mars is going to stay in this nakshatra till May 3rd, 2022. Now, Shatabhisha Nakshatra is associated with healing On the other side, it is also associated with things such as drugs and alcohol. And when Mars enters this Shatabisha Nakshatra, it is going to expose a lot of drug scandals across the world, as well as people who are indulging in drugs and alcohol abuse. The positive thing is Mars will also trigger innovations in the healthcare sector because Shatabisha has to do with healing. So Mars here is going to trigger the society to engage in some kind of healing. It will also bring about good innovations in the healthcare sector and the pharma sector. On May 4th, Mars is going to enter into the Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, which is ruled by Jupiter or Guru. And Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is represented by a two-faced person. This is the time when we need to be a bit careful because the people we are dealing with at a personal level may have two faces and try to cheat us. So, after May 3rd, 2022, we need to be a bit careful when Mars moves into the Purva Bhadrapad Nakshatra, mainly at a personal level. Now, the month of April is a very volatile month because many planets, almost all the planets, are transiting in the month of April. On 29th April 2022, Saturn is going to enter into the sign of Aquarius, and therefore Mars and Saturn are going to be in the same sign from April 29th, 2022. But Mars here is about doing actions for the good of humanity, and this is Saturn's Mool Trikona sign, and therefore Saturn will support such actions of Mars. Saturn will not oppose Mars completely. It will only make us think deeper about the actions that we are about to take. It will make us introspect more. So Mars-Saturn conjunction in the sign of Aquarius after 29th April 2022 is actually good for humanity. So what is so good that is happening after April 29th? First thing is Saturn is moving into Aquarius, and therefore its third aspect no longer falls on the sign of Pisces, at least for 2 months till 11th July 2022, post which Saturn will re-enter Capricorn. Now, the world was restricted so long because Pisces is the natural 12th house, which represents confinement, which represents isolation. And therefore, we were not able to move freely. We were not able to socialize due to the COVID pandemic. But we are getting a break now when Saturn moves into the sign of Aquarius. You will find the world to be more open. People will be able to interact freely. And a lot of restrictions will be removed at least for the next 2 months. That is till 12th July 2022. Now that we have seen the general impact, let us analyze the impact on every ascendant. So for the Aries ascendant or the Mesh Lagna, Mars rules your first house and 8th house of sudden events, and he is entering into your 11th house of hopes, wishes, aspirations and desires. So Mars is going to bring about some transformation in your life which will fulfill your hopes, wishes, aspirations and desires. So be ready for this transformation which is about to come. It is also going to give you a lot of gains in this time period. Mars aspects your second house of Taurus. So be careful with what you are eating, what you are consuming in this time period. Mars also aspects your fifth house of Leo. So take care of your children, spend time with them. Mars aspects the sixth house of Virgo. So some conflicts may come up in this time period. Be aware of those conflicts. Try to deal with them positively. And because the sixth house also represents diseases and Mars is aspecting an enemy sign, you need to take care of your health in this time period. So Mars does give you gains, but take care of your health, spend time with children and be careful about the food you are eating. Let me move to the Taurus ascendant. For the Taurus ascendant, Mars rules the 12th house of losses, 7th house of partnerships, and he is entering into your 10th house of career. So, gains from foreign lands, gain from partnership with foreign connections is seen in this time period. Mars aspects your ascendant, so be careful with respect to your health. Mars also aspects your 4th house of Leo, and therefore be careful with respect to property related issues and while driving your vehicle. Mars aspects your 5th house of Virgo, so some health problems related to children may trouble you in this time period. Let us move to the Gemini ascendant or Mithun Lagna. For Mithun Lagna or Gemini ascendant, Mars rules the 6th house of enemies, conflicts, and 11th house of gains, and he is now entering into your 9th house. So you have to be careful while dealing with your bosses, while dealing with your gurus, because you can get into conflict with them. However, being the ruler of the 11th house, Mars is definitely going to give you a lot of gains in this time period. Just be careful when you deal with your bosses. Mars aspects your 12th house in this time period, so some unnecessary expenses may come in this time period. He aspects your 3rd house of communication, that is the sign of Leo. So be careful when you deal with your bosses. He also aspects the 4th house of Virgo or Kanya for the Gemini ascendant. So certain property related issues or issues related to the health of your mother may come up in this time period. Now for the Cancer ascendant or Karka Lagna, Mars is a Karka planet who rules your 5th house of knowledge, speculative gains, children, and the 10th house of your career, and he has entered into the 8th house. So you can expect some kind of transformation in your career in this time period. Also be careful in your love life because Mars is also your 5th lord in the 8th house. So sudden events in your love life may come up and disturb you in this time period. It may also signify a change in your career or some kind of growth in your career or some transformation in your career in this time period. Mars aspects your 11th and 2nd house, and therefore he will give you gains in this time period on the financial front. He also aspects the 3rd house of Virgo. So be careful when you deal with your neighbors, when you deal with your siblings, don't get into unnecessary conflicts with them. For the Leo ascendant, this transit is very good because Mars rules your 9th house of good fortune, of gurus. He also rules your 4th house of peace, comforts, vehicles, home, and he is entering into the 7th house of partnerships. So you will get full support from both your parents in this time period. Things will be smooth for you in this time period. Mars aspects your ascendant, so do not overwork, do not over exercise. Mars also aspects your 10th house of career, so be careful at your workplace, do not get aggressive with bosses and colleagues. Mars aspects the sign of Virgo, which is the 2nd house for the Leo ascendant, so be careful with your finances. Now for the Virgo ascendant or Kanya Lagna, Mars rules the 8th house of sudden events, the 3rd house of siblings and courage, and he is entering into your 6th house of conflicts and diseases. So this is not a good transit for the Virgo ascendant because it can get you into conflict with your siblings and it can bring sudden events. So Mars is aspecting the sign of Taurus, which is your 9th house. So be careful when you deal with your gurus, also take care of the health of your father. Mars is also aspecting your ascendant in this time period. It is also aspecting your 12th house in this time period. So be careful with your own health in this time period. You might face certain expenses over health issues in this time period. Now let us move to the Libra ascendant or Tula Lagna. For Tula Lagna, Mars rules your second house of wealth, family, seventh house of partnerships, and he is moving into your fifth house. So you are going to gain a lot of wealth in this time period. You are also going to get a lot of success in this time period. But because Mars is in the fifth house, be careful with respect to the health of your children and the speculative investments that you do in the stock market. Mars here is going to do good to you, but just be careful with speculative investments. Mars aspects your 12th house of Virgo or Kanya, so it can give you some losses if you overindulge in speculative investments. It also aspects your 11th house of Leo, so it is going to fulfill your wishes, your desires in this time period. And it is aspecting your 8th house of Taurus, so sudden events may come up which can disturb you mentally in this time. Now let us move to the Scorpio ascendant or the Vrishicka Lagna. Mars rules your ascendant, that is the first house, as well as the sixth house of conflicts and diseases, and he is entering into the fourth house. This shows that certain property related disputes or old disputes or issues related to the health of your mother may come up in this time period. Mars is aspecting your 11th house of Kanya or Virgo, and it is also aspecting your 10th house of career. So on the career front, it is going to give you progress and gains. It is also aspecting the 7th house of Taurus, and therefore in your partnerships with your spouse you might face certain challenges in this time period. Now for the Sagittarius ascendant or Dhanu Lagna, Mars rules the 12th house of losses, 5th house of children, speculative gains, and he is entering into the 3rd house of courage, efforts and siblings. So in this time period, you are going to make some attempt to get gains through speculative investments. But be careful, you might land up making losses. In this time, you might go on short distance travels. You will also work for the betterment of society by joining some social groups or friend circle. Mars aspects your 6th, 9th and 10th houses, and therefore it is going to give you progress in your profession, in your business. But on the health front, you may have to be a bit careful. For the Capricorn ascendant or Makar Lagna, Mars rules the 4th house of peace, happiness, comforts, and also the 11th house of gains, and he has moved into the 2nd house of Aquarius, which represents your wealth. So gains through property, gains through wealth are indicated in this time period. Your friends will also support you wholeheartedly in this time period. Now Mars aspects your 5th house of Taurus, so be careful with the health of your children in this time period. Mars also aspects your 8th house of Leo, and therefore be careful with respect to fire related things. When you are switching the gas, when you are dealing with any electrical equipment, be careful. Mars also aspects your 9th house of Virgo or Kanya. So again, be careful with respect to the health of your father and how you deal with your gurus and bosses. Now for the Aquarius ascendant or Kumbh Lagna, Mars rules the 3rd house of siblings, and he also rules the 10th house of career, and he has entered into your ascendant. So gains in your career are indicated in this time period. Your siblings will also support you in this time period. You will also have a lot of courage and you will be action oriented and move towards your goals in this time period. You may be motivated to change your job or to move to a different role in this time period. Now Mars aspects the 4th, 7th and 8th house for you, which means that sudden events may come up in this time period. You might face certain property related issues or certain breakdowns in your vehicle in this time period. But your spouse will support you, your spouse will help you in this time period. For the Pisces ascendant or the Meen Lagna, Mars rules the second house of Aries, which represents your wealth, and he also rules your ninth house of Scorpio, which represents your good fortune and destiny. So, the ruler of your second and ninth house has gone in the 12th house. Definitely, this indicates some gains through foreign lands, it indicates travel to distant lands, and it indicates lot of expenses on your family in this time period. So overall, this transit is good for the Pisces ascendant. Just be careful with respect to your expenses in this time period. Don't go overboard and waste your money in this time period. So friends, this is my analysis of Mars transit into the sign of Aquarius from 7th April to 16th May 2022 for all the ascendants as well as the general impact of this transit. If you like this video, please mark it as liked on YouTube. For any queries or consultations, write to us at astrosevaworld@yahoo.com and we'll be glad to assist you. You can know more about us by visiting our website astroseva.tripod.com. So friends, thanks a lot. Take care. Stay safe. Bye. We'll see you soon again.